A society that judges its institutions only by whose side they take has already stopped judging them by whether or not they are right. Either the court is stolen or it's a rubber stamp for Trump. That same court struck down a Trump executive order. Pundits are struggling to fit the court into a simple box. This was a 3-3-3 court, not a 6-3 court. So let's look at what the court actually did. Picture a courtroom with 9 justices, 6 of them appointed by Republican presidents. On paper, that sounds like a rubber stamp waiting to happen. Now picture this. Instead, in the same week, that same court struck down a Trump executive order, upheld a Trump-aligned position on ballots, and left a hot-button culture war issue to the states to decide. 3 rulings, 3 different outcomes. Now, does that sound like a rubber stamp to you? Today, I'm going to show you what actually happened at the Supreme Court in late June of 2026. And this is why people on the left and people on the right both got some of this wrong, and what common sense tells us about a court that is doing exactly what it was built to do. Now, welcome, Patriots, to this edition of Common Sense for America. I'm Bruce Rutherford, your host and commentator, coming to you from the beautiful Westwood Golf Club in Houston, Texas. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's dive in. Let me give you the case from the left, because parts of it are worth hearing that you should know about. For years, the argument has gone like this. A court with a 6-3 Republican-appointed majority, it's a partisan instrument, not a neutral one. And the way the 3 of those seats were filled it caused a lot of Americans to conclude that the fix was in before a single case was argued. Trump appointed 3 judges, Gorsuch, Barrett, and Kavanaugh, all conservative originalists. All were confirmed by a Republican majority Senate. That process fueled Democratic paranoia, especially among those who already hated Trump. That suspicion did not come from nowhere. I mean, there was reason for people to have those suspicions. And here's the thing. They're not entirely wrong. A court that always rules the same way, term after term after term, would deserve exactly that kind of scrutiny. Skepticism of a concentration of power is not a partisan instinct. It's an American instinct. Have you felt that suspicion yourself? Now here's the case from the right. For just as long, conservatives have argued that this court was finally doing what courts are supposed to do, reading the Constitution as written, not as they wish it to read. They pointed to originalist judges who would rule against a Republican president just as fast as against a Democratic president. Because the law is the law, regardless of who sits in the Oval Office. They wanted judges, not political allies in robes. And here's the thing, they're not entirely wrong about that either. A judge who rules for your side every single time is not an originalist. He's a partisan wearing a robe. Isn't that exactly what conservatives spent 40 years arguing against? Trump always said he wanted independent judges who would interpret the Constitution as they thought the founders intended it to be interpreted. But here's the real problem. It's not the left or the right. It's tribalism, the instinct to sort every outcome into our team won or the other team won, our team won or our team lost, before we have even read what the court actually said. That instinct is the real problem, because it turns the 9 independent judges into a scoreboard, and it makes us allergic to the one thing that the court's job actually requires: ruling against your own side when the law says so. The question is not whether this court leans one way or leans the other. The question is whether it rules based on the Constitution or based on who's asking the question. So let's look at what the court actually did. On June 30th, in Trump versus Barbara, the court struck down the executive order that attempted to end birthright citizenship for children born to undocumented parents. Chief Justice Roberts wrote the majority opinion, joined by Sotomayor, Kagan, Barrett, and Jackson. Now that's a mix of appointees from both parties. Justice Thomas dissented, joined in part by Alioto and Gorsuch, arguing the 14th Amendment was never meant to reach that far. I said Alioto, it's Alito. I can't even pronounce the judge's name, forgive me. Every lower court that reviewed that order already called it unconstitutional. That was not close and not partisan in the way people assumed. Now, on that same day, this is West Virginia versus BPJ, the court unanimously held that state laws keeping biological males out of girls' sports do not violate federal civil rights laws. By a 6-3 vote, with 3 liberal appointed justices joining the majority, the court also upheld states' authority to draw that line. 25 states now have such laws. A day earlier, in Watson versus the RNC, that's the Republican National Committee, the court upheld mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day, even when they arrived days later. That was a 5-4 ruling written by Justice Barrett, joined by Roberts and the 3 liberal justices. Trump and the RNC had directly challenged that law. Trump and the RNC lost. 3 rulings, 3 different lineups. Is it any wonder that pundits are struggling to fit the court into a simple box? Here's what I call it. It's a 3-3-3 court, not 6 conservatives marching in lockstep against 3 liberals. 3 justices who ruled against the president's own order on citizenship. 3 who upheld the state's right to protect girls' sports. 3 who crossed the aisle, if you will, entirely to side with the voting rule the president's own party opposed. Now, that is not a rubber stamp. Think about that for a second. A rubber stamp does not strike down the president's own executive order in the same week it rules his way on some other issue. Now, Thomas Sewell has spent a career warning that institutions succeed exactly to the degree they resist the pressure to serve one faction. He put it plainly, a society that judges its institutions only by whose side they take has already stopped judging them by whether or not they are right. That is the trap both sides fell into here. I mean, grading the umpire by the scorecard instead of by the calls. So here's the false choice we need to dismiss. Either the court is stolen or it's a rubber stamp for Trump. Well, neither of those is true. And clinging to whichever story flatters your side is the tribalism that is the real villain here. The principle is simple. Judge the ruling, not the roster. My one concrete solution before you accept anyone else's spin on a decision, including mine, is to go read the actual vote breakdown for yourself. It takes about 5 minutes, and those votes and those opinions are in the public record. If a ruling splits 3 ways instead of 6-3, that is worth knowing before you decide that the court is broken. Keep letting tribalism grade our institutions for us, and we will convince ourselves no umpire can be trusted. And a country that trusts no umpire has no rules left, only power. We cannot let that happen. So do the work. Look up one ruling this week and see who actually voted and with whom. Here's what you need to remember. This was a 3-3-3 court, not a 6-3 court, not a 6-3 rubber stamp. And that's good news, whichever side you're on, because it means the umpire is still calling it straight. This matters because a court Americans trust to rule on the law, not on the roster, is the last check we have when politics fails us. An independent Supreme Court is a key part of our separation of powers that makes our Constitution work and endure. Talk about this with your friends and family tonight. Tell me in the comments, do any of these 3 rulings surprise you? I want to hear from you. Next time, we're going to take up the amendments. Some are already being proposed in response to rulings like this, including a fight over the size of the court itself. Until then, may God bless you and yours, and God bless America.